Hello everyone and welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass. My name is Olga and today we'll be talking about speaking activities and how to select them, manage them and make them workable in class. So if I ask you a question like this, what speaking activities do you use in class? Most likely you come up with a lot of examples. So let's have a look at some types of activities. Role plays and simulations. When we speak about role plays, in this situation, like the learners are given some information about the role. It can be a person, a job title, and they have role cards. They're given some preparation time and then they get together and act their small scenes using their ideas and information from the cards. For example, a mother, a father, and a teenage daughter are talking about their plans for holidays. A larger scale of a role play is called a simulation. And in this situation, we add a lot of other information, a lot of background information to the role plays. We can add newspaper articles, graphs, news, and some little bits of information. We can add this information at the start of a simulation, or it can appear while the situation is unfolding, so that the students need to react to the change of situation using and readjust their roles according to the news, or according to the piece of information that they receive. We all are familiar with discussions when we give our students different topics and they need to express their opinion, their point of view on this particular topic. We can also think about pyramid discussion. It's when the students are thinking about the topic individually by themselves and create their own attitude towards it. And after that, they work in pairs and they need to maybe convince each other that their list is better than their partners, or they need to come to a sort of a compromise. And after that, you put them in a bigger group, like they work in a group of 4, and also they discuss the same topic and try to convince their partners to take their sides, to the situation when we have the whole class speaking or like coming to an agreement. Information gap activities like we use very often in class, and in this case different students have different bits of information and they need to communicate and they need to ask each other questions in order to find the information from other students. A typical example of an information gap activity can be find the differences or spot the differences. We also do guessing activities in class, and in this case the students need to ask each other questions to find out more information about the person or a place or a situation which one of the students have in mind. Ranking activities we quite often use in classes when we ask the students to order the activities according to the importance. So we ask them to order things, activities, subjects, depending on the topic you're teaching. Right, so number 1 being the most important thing, number 10 being the least important thing. And you can leave it like this. They can rank the activities and they can work in pairs and share, or in groups and share their what's most important for them and give reasons why. Or you can move further and you can turn it into a pyramid discussion, in which case they need to convince each other to stick to their ranking order or to agree on the most important thing for the whole class. Students have different attitude and different views on speaking activities. Let's have a look at what they think about speaking activities, and maybe you can recognize some of your students here. Some students can say, I know what to say, but when it's my turn, I can't. Some of them don't have enough words to speak about the topic. Some of them don't know what to say about the topic. There are students who don't like working in big groups. They prefer working in pairs or even individually. There are students who are afraid of making mistakes because they're afraid that other people or other students will laugh at them. And there are students like this who can easily say, why should I work with my classmates? They make mistakes and their pronunciation not very good. I want to listen only to my teacher, not to my classmates. Sounds familiar? Right. And as you can guess from these examples, such attitude can lead to a situation when the students refuse to speak in class. So if we analyze the reasons why they don't speak, we can actually find out 3 categories. Topic. So the students may be not interested in the topic, or they don't have enough background information about the topic. Language. They don't have enough language to express themselves. And of course, personality. So they can be shy students, they can be very dominant students. On the bright side, we can work with all these 3 aspects. We can work with topic, we can work with language, and we can definitely work with personality. Let's have a look at what can we do if problems with speaking come up in class. So let's have a look at some types of problem and figure out whether they refer to language, to topic, or to personality. If we're talking about students that who have no interest in the topic, so it's pretty straightforward, it's about the topic, right? If students are unable to express themselves, so this is about language. If students finish the conversation very quickly, so in this case, it can be related to topic because they may run out of ideas, so may not have enough ideas to speak about the topic. If students make a lot of mistakes, definitely we're dealing with language. If stronger students dominate the conversation, we have to work on their personality. And if students don't participate in the conversation, it's the most difficult thing because here it can be related to the topic because they may not be interested in the topic or they have nothing to say about the topic. They may be just shy students, so it has something to do with their personality. And maybe they don't want to express themselves because they don't have enough language to use in the topic. All right, let's have a look at what we as teachers can do to help our students speak during the lessons. If students have no interest in the topic, unable to express themselves, or they finish the conversation very quickly. So let's have a look at what we can do to help them first create interest in the topic. In the ideal situation, you select the topic which is interesting for the students, which is relevant to their age, relevant to their level. But very often we work for a company where we have to follow the curriculum. And in this case, we have to teach this particular topic, which is not interesting for the students. So we have to create some interest in the topic. We need to build the situation carefully, and create interest in the topic. Maybe if the students are not interested in the topic, they never thought about it. So then they need to you need to provide some thinking time for them. They're human beings, they're thinking human beings, so that they can actually come up with some ideas on the topic. And of course, you need to introduce the topic through an effective lead-in, so that just to create interest and help the students get engaged in this particular topic. Of course, if they are unable to express themselves, the problem is in language. And then in this case, we need to work with language. So before we set up speaking activity, we can pre-teach some necessary vocabulary, or we pre-teach some structures, language of argument, functional language that they need for this particular activity, depending on your activity, depending on the type of your speaking activity. You can easily create some STEM sentences for the learners so that they can just follow them and feel confident while speaking. In case students finish the conversation very quickly, the reason of it can be that they don't have enough ideas. So what we can do is we can give them sufficient preparation time, and we can put them in groups or in pairs to share their ideas and help each other. We as teachers can always provide some prompts and some hints for the learners, or we can guide them with different types of questions. If they make a lot of mistakes, let's have a look what we can do. Of course, we provide hints, we provide prompts before we start speaking, before we set up the speaking activity. During the speaking activity, while they're talking to each other, we take notes, and then at the feedback stage, we can work with this language so that the students feel confident, and it will help to encourage peer or self-correction. If stronger students dominate the conversation, which is a very typical situation, we can assign different roles, and we can have a preparation stage. And at the preparation stage, we can put weaker students in one group and stronger students in another group, and they can come up with different ideas on the topic. After that, you can change pairs and put weaker students with stronger students and assign roles. They make the weaker student a presenter. And in this case, stronger student will help the weaker student with ideas, and they both can organize the presentation, and then weaker student can present. And in this case, they'll have a chance to speak. If the students don't participate in a conversation, there can be different reasons for this, right? And if they don't see the value in the activity, if they don't see the point in talking, so you need to create reasons for the students to communicate and make your activity more real life one, so that they know that this is how people communicate in real life. So that's one of the ways to do it. If they don't participate in the conversation because they're shy students, or because of the personality, they may say, I don't like to work with this student. So there can be clashes of personality in your classroom, right? So you can just rearrange the pairs so that they work with somebody who they feel confident working with, or comfortable working with. And again, if they don't have enough language, you pre-teach the language. So you can have a look, and of course it's very difficult to do it if you don't know your students, but and maybe at the first step it will be challenging. But once you get to know your students better, you can see why they're not taking part in the conversation, and you can fix it on the way. Students may not be communicating and may not be participating in speaking activities just because they're confused, just because they have no idea what they need to do, how they need to do it, how long for, and why. And this is totally our fault. And this is when we need to think about how to set up speaking activities in such a way that the students are engaged. For this, we have several steps. So the first step is to select the activity. So make sure that the activity that you choose is appropriate for your students, and it's appropriate for their age, and the topic is interesting. Then you need to visualize this activity in your head and have a clear idea what you want the students to do. Do they work in pairs? Do they work in groups? Do they talk to each other? Or if one person is speaking, what the other person is doing? So do they ask each other questions? So you need to have a very, very clear idea about what exactly you want your learners to do. Sometimes it's even helpful to write the dialogue that you, if you visualize, you write a dialogue that you want them to pronounce, or that you want them to say, and you see based on what you have, you do need to write instructions, right? And after you finish with instructions, you think of what help the students may need in terms of language, in terms of ideas, and in terms of maybe management or organization of the activity. And also you need to think if the topic may be not very interesting, so you need to think how to engage the students. So maybe you should do something to make the activity more real life, or maybe you should create some interest in the topic before you start the activity. You also need to think what to do before, during, and after the activity. So the first rule here is to make sure that you have students' attention. You cannot give instructions. You cannot start the activity if half of your lesson or half of your class is talking to other people, or if some of the students are distracted by something else. Your instruction need to be clear, short, and if the activity is long, you need to break your instruction into smaller parts. And of course, you need to check your instructions to make sure that the students did understand what you want them to do, and they will be doing it. And only after that, you give the handouts. Please keep in mind that you give the handouts after the instructions. Instructions first, handouts second. Because if you give them handouts first, you lose them. They will be looking at the handouts and they will not be listening to you. All right, so this is what you need to do before you set up the speaking activity. During the activity, while the students are talking, you need to keep a low profile. And we're talking about fluency activity, right? So we want them to speak, right? But also you need to be prepared to prompt them with ideas, with language if necessary, and to help them. While monitoring, you also write down some examples of good English and some errors to highlight and correct later. After the activity, it's a must to get feedback on the discussion, because the students need to know and they need to understand that you're with them, so you understand what's going on, you could hear what they're saying. And so in this situation, you need to agree. So you need to find if the students agree or disagree with something, if they found a solution, something like that. So there should be feedback on the discussion itself, and there should be some feedback on language. So maybe if you put some errors on the board, you ask the students to correct them. You can highlight examples of good language and clarify some points that came up during the activity. This is the reason why we monitor during the activity. All right, now let's have a look at how we can apply these rules in real life. The first step was to select the activity. Okay, so this is the activity that I selected. So this is an information gap activity from New English File Pre-Intermediate. And it's from the unit about art, and the students were working with present continuous and body parts. So in this is Spot the Differences activity, where they need to describe the picture and compare the picture and find 10 differences. All right, so this is the first step, select. Then I need to visualize it in my head. So if I think about it, I want them to work in pairs. Right, I want them to describe the activity to each other, and I want them to mark the differences. I want them to notice the differences, but also I do see how they're marking the differences, right? And I want them to take turns. I don't want one person speaking all the time or starting all the time, but I want them to take turns. So based on this, I can come up with my instructions. Work in pairs, describe the picture, circle the differences. Easy. All the instructions are easy. They're limited to 3 words, and they use imperatives. So you don't use a lot of language. So they're quite clear. All right. Now let's think about the help that the students may need with language, or maybe with something else. So first of all, I need to make sure that they're familiar with present continuous, because this is the tense that they're going to use when describing the picture. The second thing that they need is preposition of place. On the right, on the left, next to, near, in front of, behind. So like we need to review that. Maybe some the structure there are for them to review. Maybe some vocabulary. So in this case, I may think of maybe some pieces of art. And also, like, because there are a lot of details in the picture, they need to know where to start. Can they start on the right, on the left, in the middle? So it's easy to follow. In the next stage, we need to think how to engage them, right? So what I can do as teacher, so I need to think of the topic, and maybe at the lead-in stage, I can talk about art gallery. Maybe can have some pictures. And then later on during the activity, we can give them the reason to speak and the listen. So the reason to speak for them can be like find the differences, and the reason to listen, okay, do you have the same or different? So this is pretty much like for this type of activity, they have a very obvious reason: communicative focus and communicative purpose, the reason to speak and the reason to listen to each other. Okay, so as a result, so this is my thinking time. So as a result, let's have a look at what we have. So I can show them the picture and ask questions. Where are the people? Why are they there? Do you like art galleries? So the students can work in pairs or in groups and ask each other these questions. In this case, they will be talking about art galleries, even those students who hate art galleries. So they still will be tuned into the language and into the topic. Okay, so I may want to review some vocabulary the students may need for this task. And I can relate it, I can connect it with the previous stage. So I can ask them after we've discussed all these questions about art gallery. So say, okay, what can you see in the art gallery? And elicit some pieces of art, statues, sculpture, paintings, landscapes, etc. And ask them, so what do people do in art galleries? How do they feel in art galleries? So just to think about and to what do little kids do in art galleries when they feel bored? So like to elicit, they cry, they feel cranky and stuff like that. Okay. And also I can just introduce or elicit who we can see in the gallery. So like a guide or a guard. So depending on the situation, right? And what they do there, what's like, they can be sitting in the corner, or they can be like showing, like looking at the paintings, or they can telling about the paintings to other people. Then the next stage, I divide the students into pairs A, B, A, B, A, B. And I can sit them facing each other. A's seat over here, B's seat over here, facing A's. Okay. Then, all right. So we are going to describe a picture of an art gallery to each other and find the differences. And then I need to tell them, so start the description from left to right. Okay, so these are some of the things that I want them to notice. That's a lot, right? So at the end, my instructions can be like this. A, you start. Tell B what you can see in the picture. Start with, in my picture, there is the row on the left. They are da-da-da-da-da. B, listen and circle the differences. Describe one thing at a time. Take turns. So it's a lot for the students to take in, right? A lot. So if I put them in A, B, and B, A, B, then I say, okay, so you're going to describe a picture. You start. And after that, I need to use some ICQs. So I need to check my instructions. So I may ask them, so do you work in pairs? Do you work individually? Do you describe one thing or many things? Do you take turns? Yes. Where do you start? From the right or from the left, depending on what instructions I give. Right. After that, I can give them the handouts. And I can even give them some time to look at the handouts, but don't show your handout to your partner. It's a secret. Okay. So, but look at your handout, see what you can find in the picture. While they're looking at their handouts, I can put some useful language on the board for the students to refer to. The information can include the position, who, what are they doing, right? In this case, it's easy to follow. It has enough time to write. You have enough time to write it. It's very short and it helps the students to follow. While they're doing it, you monitor and help with language or ideas. And also, you take notes of their errors. Finally, at the end, you give feedback. You ask them about, all right, so how many differences did you find? Some of them say 8, some of them say 10. I say, okay, now show each other pictures and see whether you can find all the differences. There are 10 altogether. So they can check it with each other. I don't need to ask them again and again. But I could also ask them, which differences didn't you notice? Also can be useful. And after that, I can focus on their language. I can praise their good language they're using. I can praise their vocabulary, the good use of functional language. And I can also put some errors on the board and ask them to, do you think these sentences are correct or not? And then the students can correct these little bits. So this is pretty much what we can do with how we can set speaking activities and to run them so that the students can speak during the lesson. I'm sure you can find more information about continuous professional development on Gallery Teachers workshops on our website. So please visit and check their workshop library. To select speaking activities for your learners, first of all, you need to make sure that this activity is appropriate, it's age appropriate and level appropriate. That the topic of the activity is interesting. And if it's not, then you need to think how to make it interesting, how to engage the students from the very beginning. Maybe you can use pictures, maybe you can use realia, maybe you can use some story to engage them into a conversation or into the topic. You also need to think, what is the aim of the activity? What do you want to achieve with it? Because you may want to practice the target language. So, and in this case, you need also to select whether the activity will be suitable for it or not. Or you may want to develop fluency. So, and in this case, the students need to have enough information to speak freely on this particular topic. Based on these components, you need to select the type of the activity, whether it is information gap, survey, interview, ranking activity, or a role play. So if you want to practice the target language, so in this case, gap fill activity or a survey or an interview questions or an interview with set of questions will be more appropriate. But if you want them to develop fluency, in this case, maybe role play or mingling activity or simulation would be better. The reasons why some learners are reluctant to speak in class can be because they don't have enough language, or the topic is not so interesting for them and they have no background information about the topic, or they can be shy and not confident in what they're doing in class. So if they have problems with language, we can help them by pre-teaching some useful language. Can be vocabulary, can be functional language. We can write some STEM sentences on the board for them to rely on during the speaking activities, and we can make some sort of language frame for them to follow so that they feel more confident when doing it. If they have no ideas on the topic, we can provide some hints for them. So we can ask them some guided questions and we can provide some preparation time. Usually, if students work in pairs and in groups, they have more chances to share their ideas on the topic. And in this case, it will help them with to speak a bit longer. If the students are shy, so in this case, it's recommended so that they do the activity in pairs first. They normally feel more confident when working together or in very small groups. It also helps if you assign different roles to the students. So in the first, weaker students can work together and come up with the ideas, and then dominant students, if you put dominant students together with weaker students, they can help them with ideas. But then after that, shy students can present the ideas in class based on their work together. Also, if they're not speaking, they may not see the reason for them to speak. So they may say, so student, like, we don't know why we're doing this activity. In this case, it's really, really important for the teacher to make this activity communicative. So they should have the reason to speak and the reason to listen to each other. Plus, there should be some sort of outcome at the end of each activity, which you can discuss with the students at the feedback stage. It's very, very important that the students understand that we are following them and we know what they're doing, and we can be there to help, and we can be there also to express our opinion, because it's a two-way interaction between teacher and student.